have the 2024 event of NoRCEL's Blue Earth project, with which we're building a bridge between emergence and sustainability of life, the co-evolution of life with its environment, and humankind's responsibility for the ecosystem of our small planet, which is ultimately crucial to our very own existence. We boldly brand ourselves as the wise guy, Homo Sapiens. But does this hold up to critical scrutiny, or are we essentially fooling ourselves? Where do we apparently act irrationally? Why do we do that? And how do we need to account for it as we move towards our future, for which we depend on each other for good functioning of our society? So we've invited 5 panelists to give us their thoughts, which should then lead into a discussion. They've been deliberately chosen with the expectation that it would address the topic from different perspectives. And as Sohan already said, we did not tell them in which direction they should develop the question. And I hope you're as curious as I am to find out where they will be taking it. So we'll start by each panelist delivering an opening statement. We'll have those before we take a break. And then we will enter debate, which you can all actively participate in its later part. So let me briefly say something about our panelists. Robert Zubrin can be regarded as one of the most creative engineers in the aerospace industry, while also being a prolific book author on the theme of spacefaring, in particular human settlement on Mars, reflecting the fact that he's also the founder and president of the Mars Society, which advocates for human Mars exploration and colonization. Holding a master's degree in aeronautics and astronautics, as well as a PhD in nuclear engineering, he worked for Lockheed Martin for some time before founding his own R&D company, Pioneer Astronautics. Anisha Peters, who will hopefully join us later from remote, is the CEO of the National Commission of Research, Science and Technology in Namibia. Also the chair of the Namibia Presidential Task Force on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. She holds a PhD in human-computer interaction, and she's the founder of the Africa Human-Computer Interaction Conference, while in senior management roles at the University of Namibia and the Namibia University of Science and Technology, she established the Namibia Green Hydrogen Research Institute and the India-Namibia Center of Excellence in IT. Eric Persson is a reader in practical philosophy at Lund University in Sweden. His key interests are in applied philosophy, especially the philosophy of space exploration, environmental philosophy, and the philosophy of emerging technologies. Diomadesi Onyege is a distinguished professor of criminology based at the Department of Sociology at the University of Port Harcourt in Nigeria. She's best known for research on gender and crime, environmental sociology, gender and climate change, as well as related subjects like conflict resolution and peace building. Her particular current interest is on contemporary slavery studies, with particular emphasis on human trafficking and the smuggling of women and children from Africa to Europe. She also holds esteemed fellowships in Geneva, Munich, Pretoria, Oxford, and Bonn, was elected member of the Global Young Academy in 2018. Finally, Terry Key received a PhD in organometallic chemistry and now works as a reader at the University of Leeds, while also holding affiliate faculty membership in the Department of Astronomy of the University of Florida, which relates to the fact that he disciplined hopped from inorganic chemistry to chemical astrobiology. And since 2010, he also served many years as president of the Astrobiology Society of Britain. So I hope you will enjoy and get inspired. And I now asked Eric to give us his statement. And I hope all the technology works this time. Should just advance and then it should go. All right, thank you. And so let's see if this works. Yes. So I'm going to talk about the great filter. I don't know how many of you have heard about the great filter. This is an idea that was proposed by Robin Hanson in his 1998 paper, The Great Filter. I almost passed it. And the idea behind it is that the reason why we don't see a lot of aliens is that there is something that means that there's some kind of threshold that is really, really hard to pass, and that stops species and civilizations from reaching a certain level of technological civilization, which gives them the ability to colonize the universe. Now, this is right. This is some controversial idea, and I will not use it in its like original sense, because there are some issues with it. For instance, it's as it pointed out, some people want to use this great filter idea as a way of predicting our future, claim that, well, if we find like microbial life on Mars in our solar system, then that's bad news. Because if we do, that means that the great filter is ahead of us. That's bad news, right? I'm not really convinced by this, because I think the circumstances are very different in different planets, and that the evolutionary trajectories are very different on different planets and so on. So, but I will use the great filter idea in special context about us here and now, and ask, are we right now facing such a great filter? Are we at a moment in human history, at this like make or break moment, where we are like close to exterminating ourselves, ending our civilization, maybe exterminating all life on Earth, or to pass the filter and flourish? It's like make and break moment. Is this where we are right now in history? And in that case, why is it so? What does it have to do with human madness? And what can we do about it? So I'm thinking about two different versions of this. It could be that the filter is provided by the universe, and it's up to us to deal with this. Or it could be that it is us and our human madness that provides the filter. So if we look at the first alternative, that the filter is provided by the universe, yeah, there are so many ways in which the universe tries to kill us. And it's always been like this, and it will continue to be like this. We have the asteroids that exterminated the dinosaurs, and that are around us, surrounding us, and it's just a matter of time before the next big one hits. So you can say that the asteroid threat is both behind us and in front of us. We have supernova explosions, and eventually the sun will stop being our savior, and instead being our doom, and that's definitely ahead of us, right? So we do have these possible filter events ahead of us, and it's
pretty important that we start thinking about how to deal with this. And why don't we, right? But these are definitely ahead of us, but this is nothing that we have created, but we still need to deal with it. But we also have the kind of future events that we seem to create ourselves for ourselves, which seems pretty stupid, right? We have the climate change issue. We have the decline in biodiversity, which isn't getting as much publication, as much attention as the climate change issue, though I think that's at least as serious. Obviously, we are surrounded by nuclear weapons, which is pretty scary. And well, you name it, we got it, right? We are great at inventing new things that pose existential threats for our civilization, our species, and maybe life as we know it on the planet. All of this have been around for a while, but it seem to escalate. So you can say that, yeah, these are potential great futures that are here, but are getting worse. So you can say that, yeah, they're definitely ahead of us. Oh yeah. So if I were an alien sitting somewhere on another planet in another star system, and we're watching the Earth soap opera, I guess I would, if I was interested in just being entertained, you know, I would sit down with my extraterrestrial beer and say, this is gonna be good. This series is going out with a bang, you know. If I was a little bit more critical, I would say, come on, really? No one can be this stupid, not even the humans, right? Now, the producers have gone too far. As a human living on planet Earth, I'm getting pretty worried. You know? But if you think this is scary, just wait until you see the solutions. Right. Because we have other things in the pipeline. We have artificial intelligence, which is getting quite a lot of attention right now. We have synthetic biology, super interesting stuff. We have the issue of space colonization, and so on. And these things are super interesting stuff. And you could say that maybe they are pretty crazy. Maybe it is madness to create machines that are smarter than we are. Some of the brightest minds on the planet have claimed that. People like the late Stephen Hawking, like Nick Bostrom. So scary stuff. Maybe it is madness to think that we can control life. And maybe it is madness to use the same thinking that is messing up Earth and move it out in space. But maybe not. Maybe we can control it. Maybe all these inventions can be what makes us past the filter. AI, all of these things have huge potential, really. And so it can go like either way, right? And it depends a lot on how we handle it. So is this human madness? And what does human madness come into this? Is innovation mad? We have seen a lot of scary stuff that results from human innovation. On the other hand, there's also lots of pretty good stuff resulting from human innovation. If it wasn't for human innovation, we wouldn't be here today. Or for those of you who are online, that wouldn't happen today. If it wasn't for human innovation, we would still probably live in the savannah, right? Sleep in the trees. So human innovation is basically a pretty good thing. So what's the problem here? Well, I want to introduce another term, responsibility. Responsibility in the sense of responsible innovation and responsible use of our innovations. And responsibility is, I want to claim here, is super important and is like a necessary companion of innovation. Which leads me to the concept I want to I want to plug for here, the innovation responsibility gap. All the stuff we've seen before, the nuclear armament, the climate change and everything, they have one thing in common. They are great innovations, but they represent a huge gap in our ability, between our ability to innovate and our ability to take responsibility. And you could argue, and I want to argue here that it is in this gap that the human madness is, right? Not acknowledging the gap, not handling it, not doing something about it, that can be called human madness. Not innovation, but in this gap. So is it possible? Yeah, I want to claim that innovation does bring us closer to the next filter, but it's not innovation as such that decides whether we pass it or not. It's our ability to close the gap between innovation and responsibility. Innovation is great, acting responsibly is great, but innovation without responsibility, that's where the madness is. So this is my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There will be time for debate later, so save all your thoughts. And I invite Daisy to present.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to look at the climate quandary, unraveling the threads of collective madness in our response to global crisis. So the global crisis presents not just an environmental and technological challenge, but also a profound psychological and socio-political conundrum. As the planet faces escalating climate threats, the collective response often appears paradoxically inert or counterproductive, a phenomenon this paper terms as a collective madness. My paper today aims to unravel this complex tapestry of human behavior and societal structures that contribute to this seemingly irrational collective inaction or inadequate action in the face of an existential threat. According to the AR6 IPCC synthesis report on climate change in 2023, they state that more than a century of burning fossil fuels, as well as unequal and unsustainable energy and land use, has led to global warming of 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So this heightened frequency and intensity of extreme weather events have led to increasingly perilous consequences for both nature and people across every region of the world. The urgency of the climate crisis is well established in scientific literature, with consensus on the immediate need for drastic and coordinated global action. However, the gap between the recognized urgency and the collective response remains a puzzling aspect of modern society. On the one hand of the spectrum, you have individuals and communities actively engaged in addressing climate change, advocating for sustainable practices, and working towards positive change. This can be considered a rational and sane response, acknowledging the urgency and severity of the situation. On the other hand, there are instances of denial, indifference, or a lack of meaningful action despite overwhelming evidence. I give you a couple of examples. A company knowingly continues to contribute to environmental degradation through its manufacturing process because it's more cost-effective in the short term. The decision prioritizes immediate financial gains over the long-term well-being of the planet. A government approves the construction of a new coal-fired power plant to meet immediate energy demands, disregarding the long-term environmental impact and the role of fossil fuels in climate change. The short-term gain of meeting energy needs takes precedence over the long-term consequences for the climate. Another example could be a government official that denies the severity of climate change or obstructs policies aimed at environmental protection due to political affiliations or interests. The motivation to maintain popularity or support from certain industries may lead to decisions that go against the rational understanding of climate change's long-term consequences. We should also consider consumer choices. We look at individuals. Despite being aware of the environmental impacts of fast fashion, continue to support the industry due to the allure of inexpensive trending clothing. The immediate satisfaction of having new affordable items outweighs the long-term consequences of contributing to resource depletion and pollution. This disconnect from the reality of climate change can be viewed as a form of collective madness, where short-term gains, or political motivations override the rational understanding of the long-term consequences. This dissonance is just a matter of policy failure. It's not just a matter of policy failure, but also reflects deeper psychological and sociological undercurrents that shape human response to large-scale threats. The problem statement of my research centers on understanding this gap. It probes into the multifaceted reasons behind the sluggish and often counterintuitive global response to the climate crisis. This includes exploring the cognitive biases, social dynamics, political structures, and economic interests that collectively contribute to a state of inaction or insufficient action. By dissecting these components, the paper now aims to offer insights into how societies can overcome these barriers and mobilize effective responses to the climate crisis. The research adopts a multidisciplinary approach drawing from the environmental psychology, political science, sociology, and economics to provide a holistic understanding of the collective madness in responding to the climate emergency. The implications of these studies are far-fetching, offering critical insights for policymakers, activists, and the global community in strategizing more effective and psychologically informed responses to one of the most pressing issues in our time. The complexity, of course, of the global response to climate change has been a subject of extensive research across various disciplines. And I did a literature review. I looked at some of the key findings from the environmental psychology, sociology, and political science and economies to understand the collective madness in our climate response. If you look at it from an environmental psychology point of view, the role of individual and collective psychology in climate change perception and response is very critical. In an article I read entitled "Denial is Over, Climate Change is Happening, but Why Do We Still Act Like It's Not?" published in The Conversation by Celeste Young and Roger Jones in 2023, they highlight cognitive dissonance and denial as significant barriers to recognizing and acting on climate threats. Also, research conducted by Charlie Kurtz and Pana Picala, published in Frontiers in Psychology in 2022, look into the concept of eco-anxiety, a term increasingly used to describe the anxiety and worry associated with ecological crises like climate change, illustrating how overwhelming climate concerns can paradoxically lead to inaction. From a sociological perspective, it offers insights into how societal structures and norms influence climate responses. Several studies have explored the impact of social conformity and collective inertia on climate action, highlighting how societal norms often discourage the radical changes necessary for effective climate action. Johanna Honog, in an article entitled "Social Identities in Climate Action," published in the Nature, underscores the complexity of understanding how policy actors make decisions based on group identification. The study acknowledges the challenges in gathering valid information on the social identity, salience of policy in different situations, often relying on secondary data like discourses, speeches, and voting behavior. A study by Brent, Cook, and Olson in 2020 entitled "How Social Norms Are Often a Barrier to Addressing Climate Change, but Can Be Part of the Solution," examines how social norms can be both a barrier and a solution. The research suggests that well-implemented social norm strategies can motivate positive steps in the presence of a negative current norm. From a political science point of view, a study by Hart, Nisbet, and Myers in 2015 on public attention to science and political news and support for climate change mitigation explore how political ideology impacts public opinions about healthcare reforms, television news coverage of climate change, and the nature and impact of global warming coverage on news channels. It indicates that political views significantly influence how people interpret media discourses about climate change. Other studies have also shown that, suggest that climate change framing, such as framing it as a human rights risk or in terms of scientific consensus, can significantly influence individuals' beliefs about the importance of climate change policy across different ideological and partisan groups. Economically, economic factors are definitely inseparable from the climate action discourse. A work by Bashir, Nechifor, Kaldazila, and et al. 2020, where they talked about balancing national economic policy outcomes for sustainable development, argued that immediate economic interests often overshadow long-term environmental considerations, hindering substantial investments in sustainable technologies. This concept is explored in various studies and discussions related to economic policy and sustainable development. The study implies that economic inertia can arise from the complexity of policy decisions and their impact on environmental sustainability. Additionally, the concept of stranded assets in some scholarly papers highlights how economic fears about devaluing fossil fuel investments can impede the transition to a green economy. So in summary, the literature definitely indicates a multifaceted web of psychological, sociological, political, and economic factors contributing to the current state of global climate response. The review underscores the necessity for a multidisciplinary approach in addressing this complexity of climate action moving beyond mere technological solutions to encompass broader society and societal and behavioral changes. Addressing the barriers to effective responses to the climate crisis requires a lot of integrations and integrated policies. Societies can mobilize more effective responses through several key strategies. For example, education and awareness. It's one of the strategies we can adopt. We can also adopt policy and governance in fact by implementing robust evidence-based policies. You know, these are very essential for mitigating climate change. We can also look at economic incentives and disincentives. Economies need restructuring to favor green technologies and sustainable practices. This can be achieved through incentives like tax breaks for renewable energy and disincentives such as carbon pricing. Such economic tools can significantly influence both corporate and individual behaviors towards more sustainable choices. We also look at things like technological innovation and investments, community engagement and grassroots movements, behavioral changes and cultural shifts. Here we encourage a cultural shift towards more sustainable lifestyles. This involves promoting values like conservation, responsibility, and respect for the environment in everyday life. Behavioral changes such as reducing waste, choosing sustainable products, and conserving energy can collectively have a significant impact. Then, media and communication strategies. Utilizing the media, we all know the impact of the media has on the society. So utilizing this media effectively to communicate the urgency and solvability of the climate crisis can shift public opinion and create a demand for action. Transparent and engaging communication from scientists, policymakers, and activists can help bridge the gap between knowledge and action. Now, some people may ask, are there no other threats apart from climate change? Absolutely. The challenges that pose potential existential threats to humanities go beyond climate change. Here are just a few examples, and I've mentioned them. There's nuclear weapons, there's pandemics like we had the COVID pandemic recently, and there's biological threats, technological risk, environmental degradation, geopolitical tensions, resource scarcity, social and economic inequality. Addressing these existential threats requires a combination of international cooperation, responsible governance, scientific advancements, and societal awareness. It's crucial to adopt a holistic approach that considers the interconnected nature of these challenges and work towards sustainable solutions that prioritizes the well-being of both present and future generations. In conclusion, the notion of human madness in the face of climate change encapsulates a collective irrationality that manifests in decisions marked by short-sightedness and a prioritization of self-interest or immediate gains. The scientifically established challenges posed by climate change, as highlighted in the latest IPCC report, underscores the urgency of a rational and concerted response. As I earlier said, on the one side of the spectrum, there are commendable efforts by individuals and communities actively engaged in sustainable practices and of advocating for positive change, reflecting a rational acknowledgement of the severity of the situation. Conversely, the examples provided reveal instances where decisions driven by self-interest, pursuit of short-term gains, or political motivations defy the rational understanding of climate change's long-term consequences. Whether it be a company contributing to environmental degradation for immediate financial gains, a government approving environmental detrimental projects, or individuals making choices against the broader well-being of the planet. The collective failure to prioritize sustainability over immediate interests reflects a form of madness. And yes, there are existential threats to humanity that go beyond climate change. However, the collective disconnect from the reality of climate change and other existential threats to humanity underscores the critical need for a shift towards rational decision-making that considers the broader and long-term implications, placing the sustainable well-being of the planet at the forefront of our priorities. So I think I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daisy. So given that Anisha was unable to come to Leeds, we recorded a video we're going to play now.
Colleagues, fellow citizens of this changing world, we stand at a crossroads. On one hand, the urgency of the climate crisis demands a rapid shift towards a green future. On the other hand, we navigate the rise of artificial intelligence, a powerful force with both immense potential and ethical concerns. As we delve into the intricate web of concerns that engulf our world, I chose to elaborate on it under the theme of More Humanity, Shaping a Green Future. I am Anisha Peters, the CEO of the National Commission on Research, Science and Technology in Namibia, the former chairperson of the Namibia Presidential Task Force on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I am also an adjunct research professor specializing in human-computer interaction. In my world, there are two concerns that I am exposed to on a daily basis. Number one, climate change, with specifically the rapidly unfolding green industrialization agenda vis-a-vis the just transition. And number two, artificial intelligence and the desire for human-centered AI and its rapid evolving impact on different issues, different continents, on Africans, and how we can mitigate the potential harms while leveraging it for good, such as addressing some of the very basic needs, such as remote villages not having access to clean water and sanitation, electricity, and food. Previously, we had the Namibia 4IR task force, who chose the theme as 4IR as an enabler for a green and inclusive industrialization. Hence, you can see where my concerns are stemming from. Then we have the concerns of geopolitical tensions that we have to navigate and which impacts both of my top two concerns. So I wanted to test whether these two concerns are also amongst the top 5 global concerns in the world. So I asked ChatGPT and the BART what these 5 top global concerns would be. And both of them actually concurred, and they came up with number 1, climate change and environmental degradation. Number 2, the geopolitical tension and instability. Number 3, the cost of living crisis and economic precariousness. Number 4 is the technological advancements and ethical dilemmas. And then number 5, global disease and pandemic threats. So it showed me then that everywhere we are concerned with these issues, but that it is also all interrelated somehow. So while there are different technologies out there, I will single out artificial intelligence as one of the major concerns of today. AI has been under development for a long period of time, but advances in computing power and machine learning, large amounts of available data, plus our desire for a super efficient workmate to not only automate our mundane tasks, but also be a companion, made the advances possible that we see today. On November 30th, 2022, we experienced a eureka moment, or a Netscape moment, as Mo Goddard, an ex-Googler, calls it. Mo explains that a Netscape moment is the moment when users became aware of the possibilities of the internet through their Netscape browsers. Although the internet had been in existence for a long time, users could not interact with it, and thus they did not really realize the possibilities of the internet. Likewise, people became aware of the developments and advancements of AI, its data and possibilities, through OpenAI's ChatGPT that opened the window to the vast world of, at least in this case, generative AI, although this development has been ongoing for a very long time. This type of interfacing with AI is precisely human-computer interaction, or HCI's, goal, and its role goes beyond mere interfacing, but also understanding humans and all its intricacies and facets, and therefore modeling AI even more into our own likeness. We want to model AI like ourselves in our own image and go to great lengths to achieve that. But we also do not want AI to be completely like ourselves. I would say we are a little bit mad, human madness, or are we not? While we told ourselves that AI, generative AI that is merely based on data input, processing, and output to seem human-like, we also got frightened with its occasional hallucinations, that is, making up its own lies and then making it seem believable. But we assured ourselves that humans have superior creativity, communication, sense-making skills. But then ChatGPT 4.0 et al. Proved us wrong again. Now we are racing to have the AI look like us, such as a Mecha, Neo, etc. While we are also busy with the complex questions on ethics, responsible use, regulating black box AI, human-like responses from AI regarding its feelings, its emotions, expressing its loneliness and fears of death, or, in other words, being switched off. This seems akin to sentientism or self-awareness, does it not? But no, we're not there yet. We now say, oh, artificial general intelligence is still way far off. But in the back of our minds, we ponder whether the far away is really that far off. While debates generally center around the good uses of AI, governments ponder about the negatives and unintended consequences of bias, inequality, job losses, weaponization, and certainly the impact of huge energy and water resources, as well as specialized skills, which renders a bigger chasm between the haves and the haves not. While AI threatens certain types of existing jobs, newer jobs are appearing, such as prompt engineers. But AI should also augment human tasks. And while the human needs to remain in control, so is upskilling and reskilling of humans, so very much needed today. So AI is our own worst reflection in the mirror. For example, the bias, inequalities, unethical uses, etc., we are currently seeing emerging with AI are our own creation, because AI feeds off the data we created or omitted. Furthermore, AI development in Africa presents unique challenges and opportunities due to data scarcity and resource constraints, which includes computing infrastructure and skills. But AI is also the one area that shows great promise in Africa. Instead of leaving AI in control, consensus is now that the human has to remain in control. Therefore, collaborative decision-making and co-creation, working side by side with AI, means that we are drawing on human-computer interaction for this. HCI is defined as a multidisciplinary field concerned with designing, developing, and evaluating computer systems and technologies that humans interact with. HCI evolved as a field that holistically studies the human and its complex interactions with the environment, with an aim of understanding and designing technologies that are human and community-centered, enjoyable, user-friendly, efficient, safe, and satisfactory for humans. Thus, imagine HCI as a bridge between humans and technology, built from different fields like computer science, psychology, design, sociology, and others. HCI is important today and in the future, as it is critical in designing interfaces and systems that facilitate collaborative decision-making between humans and AI. At the heart of HCI lies a profound understanding. Technology is not only an isolated entity, it is an extension of ourselves. Every interface, every algorithm bears the imprint of our hopes and biases, and also our shortcomings. This is particularly true of AI, a tool that learns and evolves through the data we feed it. The AI mirror reflects back not only our capabilities, but our flaws as well. The inequalities present in our societies are amplified in the algorithms that govern decision-making, such as, for example, loan applications and healthcare diagnosis. This is the human madness reflected back at us, a stark reminder of the ethical considerations inherent in shaping AI. But despair is not the answer. HCI offers us that path forward as a way to guide the dance between humans and AI. It's not just about building interfaces, it's also about understanding how we interact with technology on an emotional, cognitive, and social level, and incorporating ethical principles and user-centered design. HCI can ensure that AI serves humanity, not the other way around. Think of HCI as a choreographer in this grand waltz. It guides our steps, ensuring that technology empowers us and not replace us. It fosters collaborations where humans leverage the strengths of AI while retaining control over its direction. And this isn't about creating perfect machines, but rather about creating responsible partners. I see this interaction, augmentation, and coexistence with AI as a symbol of the morph humanity, the merging of human and technological evolution that will define our future. But how can we ensure that this morphing leads us towards a green future, one that is sustainable and equitable for all? Let's take climate change. This isn't just an environmental issue, it's a human crisis. Climate change threatens planet Earth's ecosystems, food security, human, animal, and environmental health, and this is marked amongst others by rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and environmental destruction. One thing that most countries do agree on is that a green future is the way to go, as large multinational corporations and governments are shifting to low or zero carbon technologies, with renewable energies replacing fossil fuels. Green industrialization is the new buzz, and many countries are involved with different initiatives such as renewable energies, circular economy champions, green infrastructure development, technological innovation hubs, and regional collaborations, of which some examples include the EU's Green Deal Industrial Plan and Africa's Green Industrialization Initiative, which had been on the cards since 2016, according to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. As I mentioned before, in Namibia, we have the green hydrogen and green ammonia currently being the talk of the town. And also, under the 4IR task force, we placed also 4IR as an enabler for green and inclusive industrialization for Namibia. But beyond renewable energies, fossil fuels might not be able to disappear that soon on the event horizon as we imagine. But even the operations of oil and gas can also undergo decarbonization of its operations and supply chain. Sustainability should be on the top of our minds, even in our individual lifestyle choices. Technology plays again a critical role in achieving carbon neutrality and a green future, with AI and HCI being critical players alongside the humans as more innovations and breakthrough technologies are being built. HCI can help us design AI tools that predict and prevent climate disasters, manage resources efficiently, and create new sources of renewable energy. Imagine AI-powered grids that optimize energy consumption in real time, or smart irrigation systems that minimize water waste in agriculture. But it's not just about high-tech solutions. HCI can empower communities by developing accessible tools for sustainable practices. Imagine such AI-powered apps that can connect farmers to markets, or mobile platforms that educate rural communities about climate-resilient agriculture. Now let's address the ethical concerns surrounding AI. Bias in algorithms can perpetuate inequalities and injustices. HCI ensures fairness and transparency in AI development whilst mitigating these risks. Imagine AI systems that prioritize environmental sustainability in decision-making, or transparent algorithms that hold developers accountable for their impact. So this isn't just about replacing humans with machines. It's about augmentation, collaboration, and more humanity working together. We need to upskill and reskill ourselves to thrive alongside AI, ensuring humans remain in control of this powerful tool. The future won't be easy, but it's necessary. We must embrace HCI as the bridge towards a greener, more equitable world. By working together, humans and AI, guided by ethical principles and informed by HCI, we can shape a future where technology empowers us to heal our planet and build a brighter tomorrow for generations to come. So, let this be the starting point of our journey towards a sustainable and equitable future, where HCI and AI forms a crucial bridge for a morph humanity heading towards a green future. I thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, so we continue to our next panelist, who will be Cherokee.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Terry. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today. So thank you very much for the organisers to give me this chance to be here and to tell you a little bit about another aspect of human madness. So we've had 3 presentations so far, and I have to admit that my presentation that I'm going to give to you now is completely different to the one that I sent to Martin the other day. I'd sent him a presentation, a PowerPoint with 30 odd slides, and I was going to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing as a scientist. So I'm a scientist at Leeds University, and I'm particularly interested in the concept of life. And obviously, as NoRCEL is involved in the chemical emergence of life, that's how Sohan and I and Martin know each other. And I was going to tell you a little bit about the concept of life and how we might have got it all wrong and how we might have all gone a bit crazy about it. But last night I had a bit of a rethink and I've changed it. So I am hoping that some of the things I would have talked about might crop up as questions afterwards. We'll see. But anyway, I'm going to talk about something slightly different. And also it's going to have a little bit of show and tell. So I have a prop to show you, which hopefully, I'm hoping will be illustrative of the sorts of things I want to talk about. So madness, here we go. Some sort of definition of the word madness, according to the OED. Imprudence, delusion, wild foolishness, all sorts of different words that one can use to express this concept of madness. I actually like the word delusion. It's actually quite a nice one. And what I want to tell you about is, it's not my idea or any individual's particular idea, but it is a source of, I think, great human madness and great human genius. Here's an example of one human being who I think many of us might consider as a genius. This is Albert Einstein, of course. He made a quote. He said, or is reported to have said, that we must remember that we do not observe nature, whatever it is when we look at the real world. We don't observe it as it actually exists, but only through our means of perception, only through the ideas of what we're seeing, what meaning that has to us. So any theories, scientific, philosophical, whatever, that we have, we can or cannot observe, the reality, what we think is reality, or our picture of reality, I'm using my own words there, our picture of reality is an illusion. A persistent illusion, to be sure, but it's an illusion because it's based on what we think or how we interact. So as humans, what we try to do, and we've heard different ways from our 3 other panelists earlier on, how we try to understand our world, our reality, our place in it, our responsibilities towards it, etc. And we do that really as Homo sapiens, as humans. We've got a number of ways in which we interact with reality. Through our physical senses, for example, through slightly less obvious senses, such as the ability to move, balance. Interoception is the way our internal physical nature works. We think we might control how our heart beats and how our lungs pump, but they all happen without our cognitive control. And then we have cognition as well, the ability to think, the ability to perceive, to create ideas. And it's really this thing that I want to sort of give an illustration of, because I think in many ways it highlights how we do great things as humanity, as Homo sapiens, but it's also a little bit crazy as well, as I hope to point out. So essentially, we have our world, our reality, physical existence, cognitive existence, consciousness, the way we think, the whole dimensions of existence, or fabric of existence, if you like. And then we as humans, we break it down into little chunks, which we call concepts or ideas, thoughts. And then we try to build back in connectivity between those thoughts. And we have fantastic tools such as language to do that. We have emotions, we have communication in many different ways. And we're trying to understand how it all fits together. How it all fits together. And it comes to this idea, this word of conceptualization. So how might human perceptions about the concept we call life, this is what I'm interested in as a scientist and as a thinker, limit our understanding of and engagement with existence? And for this, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to give you a little example of how the human mind works to conceptualize things. Here we have, it's clean, don't worry. It's a bed sheet. It's actually my youngest son's bed sheet. There we go. That's a bed sheet. This is to represent the fabric of existence, the reality of the world in which we live in. And that includes the cognitive world we live in, consciousness and everything we think of. So that's the whole lot. That's it. If I pull this out like that and create a structure, what is that? This is a question.
Part of the fabric.
Part of the fabric. Very good. But it's also a shape, isn't it? It's a shape. It's a form that is different from that. Because you can see all sorts of folds over here in the fabric, all sorts of different shapes and movements. And this is a different one. Because what I've done here is I've just pinched off. And I think Eric made the points about gaps and filtering earlier on. It's great words. Because what I've done is I've compressed those. I've created a gap here between this thing and the fabric of existence. In physics and mathematics, we say there are phrases like, we've collapsed the dimensions. The wave function of reality is collapsed. What it means to me anyway, is that we've hidden away all the things that make this and everything else one and the same. But they are one and the same. And I think in our previous speaker as well, in her presentation, she mentioned human-computer interface. That's another concept over here. Yeah, we've got AI over here. AI, Homo sapiens. They look different. They are different. But what they are, when you realize that there are collapsed connections between them, if you pull them apart, you actually see that they are one and the same in terms of the fabric of existence. And this is where I think conceptually, the idea of having a concept is a really powerful one, because it allows us to say this concept has things that are connected within it, but things that are outside it that are not connected, not the same concept. The reality is that the connections are there. We've just overlaid on top of reality the idea that those connections are hidden. And that, I think, is the madness part. So marvelous. That brings me to the end, actually. That brings me to really what I wanted to say, except for the final thing, is to put this in a sort of philosophical, these are not my ideas. Millions of people have had these ideas. Here's a particularly appropriate one, I thought, which I've just picked up. This is from the 20th century French philosopher Gilles Deleuze. He talks about writing as a form of communicating. He means, in my interpretation, communicate, form a rhizome, which is what the NoRCEL is, a rhizome, an interconnected mass of connectivity which grows and emerges like a life form in its own way. Increase your territory by deterritorialization and recognize that what you think is a concept is actually not separate, but is built of the same things of everything else. Extend the line of flight to the point where it becomes an abstract machine covering the entire plane of consistency or existence, if you like. So this is, these are the words of Gilles Deleuze, for example. Many others have had exactly the same ideas, but I think instead of going through 30-odd slides of boring stuff, I hope that has made the point about that I want to make about the connection between human madness and human genius. So with that, I will leave it there.
Thank you very much, Terry. And we're moving on to the last one of our panelists. Which is Robert. With that.
I want to thank you for inviting me, especially since my perspective is a wee bit different from the stated foundation of this colloquium, because I do not think humans are mad. I think anti-humans are mad. And okay, so I come among you not to make peace, but with a sword. Okay, so what are anti-humans? Anti-humans are people who believe in anti-humanism. Okay, now what anti-humanism is the belief that humans are essentially vermin consuming the world's fixed resources. Therefore, number one, human numbers, activities, and liberties must be severely constrained. And number two, therefore, someone must be empowered to do the constraining. And this is why people, intellectuals, promoting this general concept have never lacked for sponsors. Okay, now, okay, so the latest version of anti-humanism is the alleged crisis caused by carbon emissions. Now, let's take a look at what carbon emissions have actually caused. Okay, this is a graph showing average global GDP per capita, okay, against total carbon use of the human race, okay? And you can see, okay, it goes straight up, okay? This, in secular terms, is the greatest story ever told, okay? Okay, here's the world you can find in the novels of Victor Hugo and Charles Dickens, where people are actually starving to death in Paris and London. That it was a threat if you were poor, that you could actually die of starvation in the two capitals of the world, okay? Here's the world when I was born. I'm a little older than I look. I was born in 1952. And, okay, when I was a little boy, my parents would urge me to finish my breakfast because there were children hungry in Europe. Okay, yeah. And you could tell the difference between Europeans and Americans by looking at their teeth. Good. All right. And here's 1970. Okay, this is when a large number of books were published. The population bomb, the limits to growth, et cetera, warning of imminent shortages of everything unless we stopped growth. Okay, and there's where we are today. Okay, and you have to imagine that well, you don't have to imagine. You can see that there are people saying we need to decarbonize. We need to go back to here or to here. What does that actually mean for human well-being? Now, these ideas are not new. Okay, in modern terms, the scientific anti-humanism, which is what this is a variant of, that is to say, not based on religious cult ideas, but on alleged scientific concepts. Okay, goes back to Malthus, who claimed population expands geometrically, food supply expands arithmetically, and therefore people are always going to outrun food, and people are going to get hungrier and hungrier. Okay, and this conceit underlines some of the worst policies pursued in the British Empire, in Ireland, and in India. And I can discuss that further in questions. But to move on, okay, in my own time, and in the time of many of the people here, there was a very famous book published in 1968 called The Population Bomb. It was an international bestseller. The author was a man named Paul Ehrlich. Okay, and he said, well, we're in 1968, there's 3 billion people in the world. There's going to be at least 6 billion by the year 2000. And since there are hungry people in the world now, everybody's going to be starving by the year 2000. Okay, now, so he's here and he's predicting GDP per capita is going to go like this. Okay, because there'll be twice as many people and there'll be half as much food for everybody. In fact, it went like this. Now, Ehrlich was not only wrong about the future, anybody can be wrong about the future. Okay, but by the way, the population did go up more or less as he had projected, but the human well-being went in exactly the opposite direction. Okay, but as I said, he was not only wrong about the future, he was wrong about the past, because Ehrlich was born in 1930. Okay, and if his theory had been correct, there were a little more than half as many people in the world in 1930 as there were in 1968. If his theory was correct, everybody in 1930 would have been much richer than they were in 1968. And he would have been there because he was born in 1930. He would have seen the golden age of the 1930s when everybody was rich. Okay, but of course, that's the exact opposite of the truth. Okay, now GDP per population has been going up historically because productivity has been going up through invention, technology. What is technology? Sometimes called labor-saving machinery, if you will. Well, labor-saving machinery actually is it's productivity multiplying technology. And since the amount of product available per capita on average equals the amount produced per capita, okay, these two numbers are equal, okay, on average, it means that as technology advances, human well-being is going to advance. There's going to be more resources, more product available per person, and that is exactly what we see. And furthermore, what's technology? Technology is the product of human effort, which you might measure in person hours or person years. Well, of course, over time, the number of person years is accumulating. And so technology is accumulating. Technology is cumulative. Actually, the higher the population, the faster the rate of innovation because you have more inventors, and inventions are cumulative. And since all new inventions are combinations of previous inventions, the more inventions there are, the easier it is to invent more stuff. Okay, if you got a motor and a bicycle, you make a motorcycle. Okay, you can't make a motorcycle without a motor and a bicycle. Okay, you can once you have those things. Okay, so okay, we're going up. Okay, now, so the Malthusian is false. Okay, but that hasn't stopped it from being embraced by, well, as I said, it was embraced by a number of thinkers and governors of Ireland and India and the British Empire. And of course, the most extreme advocates of Malthusianism were the Nazis, Hitler, well, first of all, Hess. National Socialism is nothing but applied biology. Okay, Hitler, the laws of existence prescribe uninterrupted killing so that the better may live. resources are limited. And by the way, the scariest picture of these here that you see to me is this one, okay? Because it shows that the Nazis were not these horrific monster Draculas depicted in Allied propaganda. They were normal people who had embraced horrible ideas, okay? All right, now, after the war, you couldn't advocate Nazism or the population reduction in the form, the openly racist form embraced by the Nazis, but it was promoted anyway. We had in the 50s the campaign to stop the population explosion. And interestingly enough, in this time period, as with the Nazis, this was generally in right-wing political format. That is, the population explosion was supposedly going to create the cannon fodder for the communist world revolution, so that therefore it had to be stopped. And the US Congress made it mandatory for US foreign aid programs to require population control programs in third world countries as a condition of getting aid. And once again, here's Ehrlich and here's his protege, Jean Holdren. And just listen to this. When a population of organism grows in a finite environment, sooner or later it will encounter a resource limit. This phenomenon, described by ecologists as reaching a carrying capacity of the environment, applies to bacteria on a culture dish, fruit flies in a jar of agar, or to buffalo on a prairie. It must also apply to man on this finite planet. So they are looking at humanity as if we were bacteria on a culture medium. This is absolutely false. And it is degrading, and certainly one does not seek to increase the rights of bacteria on the culture medium or escape from a culture medium. Now, see, the difference is people create resources. There's no such thing as a natural resource. There's only natural raw materials. It is human ingenuity, that technology that creates resources. Uranium was not a resource till we invented nuclear power. Oil was not a resource till we invented oil drilling and refining and things that would run on the product. Okay, land was not a resource until we invented agriculture. And I mean, here's another example. Just look at metals, okay, which aside from land, historically was one of the things that countries would, or rulers would think would go to war for, okay? Humans start using metals in a big way around 6000 BC. You got the Bronze Age, and it runs to 1200 BC. So this is almost 4,000 years. Well, actually, it's almost 5,000 years. And in this time, they're using copper, silver, gold, tin, and lead, okay? A set of metals that collectively amount to less than 100 parts per million in the Earth's crust, okay? They're not using iron. They don't have kilns hard enough to smelt iron. But then, around 1200 BC, the people developed kilns that are hot enough to melt iron, and iron is 56,000 parts per million in the Earth's crust. So all of a sudden, metals become wildly more plentiful. And so instead of just having metals for artwork or for aristocratic armor, they become available for tools for ordinary people, axes, hammers, plows, okay? And the power of human culture expands radically. It becomes possible to start farming in places in Europe, north of the Alps and such, which you couldn't before. And then, of course, in the 20th century, aluminum. You can't get aluminum without electricity, okay? It cannot be thermally separated from oxygen, okay? It's not known to science until 1820 and not known to the general use in the public until the turn of the 20th century. Okay, if you actually were to find aluminum in a Mesozoic sediment, you've got proof of an extraterrestrial visitation, okay? But this becomes available, and titanium, silicon, all this. All right, so population control. As I say, they imposed population control as a condition of US foreign aid, and many European countries did likewise. Now, these programs were racist. Okay, they were racist in the large because it's the white world imposing population control on the dark world, but also, okay, they're racist in the small because in virtually every single one of these countries, there is a dominant ethnic group and an inferior ethnic group that is socially inferior. So in India, you have the high caste Brahmins imposing population control on the untouchables. In Sri Lanka, it's the Sinhalese on the Tamils. in Peru, the Hispanics, on the indigenous people. In Africa, in various countries, it's tribe A that's got the power of doing it to tribe B. Okay, and then in China, these ideas are picked up, and their impact was terrific in the one-child policy. Okay, now, in the latest of this version is the carbon thing. Okay, in 1972, the Club of Rome said we had to stop using coal because we were going to run out of coal. Now we have to stop using coal because we're not going to run out of coal. Okay, the problem is always different. The solution is always the same, which is to restrict human activity. Okay, and furthermore, okay, you've got people attempting to use this imperative for power. That is, a crisis is the basis upon which you organize a mob. Okay, and here's Al Gore. The climate crisis also offers us the chance to experience what very few generations in history have had the privilege of knowing: a generational mission, the exhilaration of a compelling moral purpose, a shared and unifying cause, the thrill of being forced by circumstances to put aside the pettiness of conflict that so often stifle the restless human need for transcendence, the opportunity to rise. When we rise, we will experience an epiphany as we discover that this crisis is not about politics, it is a moral and spiritual challenge. Okay, so it's an opportunity to organize a mob for political purposes. That's what it is. Okay, now the problem with this is, and I know people on the left have gravitated towards this, is if you say there's limited resources, there's two answers to that quandary. One is, let's all sacrifice together. That's the left-wing answer. The other is, let's make them sacrifice. That's the right-wing answer. And guess which of those options always wins? Number two, because there's always more people that want to make them sacrifice than want us all to sacrifice. Okay, okay, so this idea of limited resources is a formula for world war. It sets all against all, okay? And we need to refute it. We need to refute it through intellectual argument, and we need to refute it in action through invention that expand resources, through nuclear power that expands energy, and yes, through expansion into space that makes it clear. But fundamentally, we are not endangered by a lack of resources. We are endangered by those who believe there is a shortage of resources. We're not threatened by the existence of too many people. We're threatened by those who think there are too many people. Okay. So the fundamental issue is the nature of humanity. If the idea is accepted that the world's resources are fixed, then each new life is unwelcome and is unwelcome. Each unregulated act or thought is a menace. Every person is fundamentally the enemy of every other person, and each race or nation is the enemy of every other race or nation. The ultimate outcome of such a worldview can only be enforced stagnation, tyranny, war, and genocide. Only in a world of unlimited resources can all men be brothers. And that is why we must totally reject anti-humanism and embrace instead an ethic based on faith in the human capacity for creativity and invention. For in doing so, we make a statement that we are not living at the end of history, but at the beginning of history, that we believe in freedom and not regimentation, in progress, not stasis, in love rather than hate, in life rather than death, and in hope rather than despair. And if you want to know more or read more into my thinking on this, I've written an entire book on this called Merchants of Despair. It's available on Amazon. Thank you very much.
So, welcome back, everyone. Now, first of all, unfortunately, we received the news that Anisha is not feeling well. Yep. So she can't join us for this panel discussion. So, nevertheless, we're a great panel assembled, and we hope that you have lots of questions. But first, I would like to ask the panelists and invite them to reflect a bit on what they've just heard. What do you take away from that? Who wants to start?
I can start. I think it was really interesting to hear all these very different ideas and opinions and different concepts, and especially your presentation was on a interesting take on human madness, if you want, and your use of this prop. You were the only one who had a prop, and I was thinking, if I may ask a question, is it like you're leaning towards Kantianism, meaning that our senses and our concepts and our way of thinking are like a filter between us and the real world, or are you leaning more against towards Platonism, where we are like sitting in a cave and looking at shadows without seeing the reality? So this is the philosopher's question.
No, it's a very good question. Philosophically, my thoughts lean more towards Spinoza than anyone else. So Spinoza, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm no expert in Spinoza. But Baruch Spinoza is a 17th century Portuguese Dutch emigre, and his idea was that the concept that we call God, or the concept of the infinite, the all-encompassing, equates to the same thing as nature. So he was saying that everything we consider to be ourselves, biological, yes, biology, but it's the interconnectedness of it, not the individual object. So not tree, not human, not dolphin, but the connective pathways between us, physical and cognitive, the way we frame the ideas of dolphin, tree, human. It was all one. I can put words in his mouth, but that's the way I interpret a lot of Spinoza thought. So for me, I thought, listening to all the presentations today, the thing that came across to me most was the power, the potential power of that connectivity to create something new about the interface between humanity and artificial intelligence. And who knows where that may lead us, but what it will lead us to is the undeniable fact of what humans do best and the whole creation is best, and that is create stuff.
Well, as I remarked to Terry, just as he broke, with respect to his points, there's a very interesting book out there, just published. It's called An Immense World by an American scientist named Edward Young. Young spelled the Chinese way, Y-O-N-G. And what it's about is how different animals perceive the world. And in fact, there is much more than 5 senses that are used in the animal world. There's 5 that Terry listed: sight, hearing, smell, touch, taste. But there's many other senses in the animal world. There's echolocation. There's a bat would perceive this room totally differently. And in many ways, you could get echoes from all of you and know the textures of your skin and everything. Okay, there are animals that are colorblind. There are animals like dogs that see a more limited set of colors than humans, and there are animals like some kinds of birds that see many, many more colors than humans see. That is, we compared to them, we're colorblind. There's animals that can sense electric fields in the environment. A cat lying on the ground is actually sensing vibrations in the ground, and it can detect a mice walking across the floor on the other side of the house. And elephants can actually communicate through the ground with the vibrations by their feet. And so they perceive the world in a totally different way. But even among humans, okay, you walk by two men playing chess in the park. Okay, if you know chess, you're seeing all sorts of things going on that chessboard that a person who doesn't know chess, it just seems like two guys are staring at a chessboard like this, that there's actually nothing happening when there's all sorts of things happening, but it's invisible. So yeah, there's an immense unseen world, and so yeah, what you call, well, there is a reality that's underlying, but you only perceive a limited amount of it. That, you know, hummingbirds, you could hear a chirp, and to you it just sounds like one note, but their hearing is so spatially definitive that in the millisecond or something that the note lasts, they can hear dozens of notes. They can hear an entire tune within a single chirp. You're only hearing the average frequency of that chirp, whereas they hear an entire song within one chirp. And anyway, that's what I thought about when I heard it.
Yeah. Let me start with where you give the example of the game of chess. But remember that when there are two players in the game looking at the board, the other player, or where both players are always predicting what the other person is going to take, and what can he or she do to maybe block that action, or if that action is taken, what next? What's the next response? And I think that's where we are here right now. We are taking certain actions that have consequences, but we have to think about what are the implications of these consequences? Can we stop doing what is irrational or considered insane? From the panel discussions, I think that we are almost on this same page about various aspects of this human madness. However, I get the sense that we keep forgetting that the world is not an equal place. We have global north and we have global south. And most of even the interventions that are being made today are all centered around the global north. You're asking people to transition to a green economy. You're asking me to drive an electric car. Do I have electricity to do basic things where I'm coming from in the first place? Before you tell me not to not drive cars that we use fuel. So we need to also consider, make sure that everybody, first get to the point of equality. We have to be on the same page first. One side does not decide for the other parts. There was also an example. He said, is it Maslow's Multanian law or something theory that's predicted that by 2000 that there will be everyone will be prosperous. But there was a part of the world that was not prosperous at all. I'll give you an example in Africa, for example. Let me use Africa, and I know the other parts of Asia that were suffering extreme poverty. And it still remains like that till today. So we need to think when we are making, trying to bring in strategies and interventions, we should make sure that there's a balance and see how it affects cuts across the board. So that's my own take.
If I may follow up on that, something that strikes me is we're quite good in inventing new technology, and frequently we're less good on how we deliver the framework of making good societal use of the new inventions. We see, for example, that lawmakers still struggle to understand the internet. It operates in a way that is completely incompatible with lots of national laws. And the national laws have not been adjusted, and a lot of things just doesn't make sense in practice. And
we now see laws factually being ignored because it just can't work in practice. And we also see that the same technology can be used in different ways in different parts of the world. So how do we make better use of the opportunities that we get from new technology? And how does the technology development go along with the further development of our society?
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's very much in line with what I was trying to say. There is this gap between, on the one hand, we're good at inventing stuff. On the other hand, we are not so good at, first of all, leading the invention in a responsible way, and then to use it in a responsible way. And you just gave a good example of that. And it seems to me that, especially for technology that is as potent as AI, that can have really huge benefits, but can also be a great threat, that it's important to close this gap and to do as well as Bostrom and Stuart Russell and others have pointed out, that we need to figure out how to tame it before we actually have it. Because once we have it, once we have turned over the power to the machines, we will not get it back. We need to tame it first.
Well, I mean, I'm much more optimistic. I mean, let's consider one of the most powerful technologies that it came into use, well, about 120 years ago, and into fully widespread use in the post-war period. So there may be people here whose parents did not have one, namely washing machines. Okay. All right. And if you think of the impact of washing machines on society, okay, we had a washing machine when I was a kid, but when we went up to the vacation in their summer house, there was not a washing machine, and so my mother would actually wash clothes in the wash tub, okay, when we're on vacation. Okay, so maybe she was happy when we went back from vacation, because in the house we had washing machine. But washing machines and dishwashers and dryers, okay, make it a snap to wash your clothes. Okay, it takes almost no labor. Previously, I mean, women especially, would spend a very large amount of their time doing this in a house. And it was one reason why very few women had careers of any kind, because someone had it. And there were other women who were called washerwomen, who had careers washing clothes for, well, basically bachelors, would deliver their clothes to the washerwomen. So washing machines put the washerwomen out of business. But you know, was that a bad thing? I think it was a good thing. You know, then whatever. I mean, so you have half of the human race liberated from that kind of activity as their primary activity into being able to do other things. So, I mean, that's a huge change. And what could go down the list? And AI, okay, is a tool. Okay, it's okay. There's going to be, you know, right now, if you want to know how to do something technical, okay, make fuel on Mars. You know, I don't know. You go on Google, you say Mars propellant manufacturer, and you'll get a list of 300 articles of various qualities that will tell you different innovations, some true, some not, some too technical to read, some below your level of you know, written for children. You know, there'll be an AI that you call up, you know, I'd like to speak to Robert Zubrin and have whatever it's called, the avatar of me talking about that. And you could speak to somebody else about some other technical area, or it could tell you how to fix your car so you won't have to go to the mechanic. And you know, it's a tool. AI is increasing the ability of people to do things. People are the users of AI, okay? Just like people are the users of Google or previously of encyclopedias. You know, and yes, it has military applications, especially with drones. You could program an AI to recognize a certain kind of target, and it could just steer the drone there. But it's not like this is going to steal the world from people. It's science fiction of robots with purpose, you know, taking over the world. And I mean, who's going to make them? I mean, anyway, that's my view on it. I'm for it.
Yes, yes. So the AI you're talking about is this pretty stupid AI we have today. That's not even relevant, right? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about real AI. But let's talk about the washing machines,
okay? Because
that's a good starting point. So today, the washing machines have computers in them, mm-hmm. And more or less, well, most things we are surrounded with have computers in them, and they are getting connected. So the washing machine today can decide what cycle to use by itself, depending on what we put in it. And a modern fridge can actually give you a call on your phone if you forgot to stock up on certain things, and eventually the fridge will be able to communicate with your self-driving car to ask your self-driving car to go and buy milk if it's and we are getting ourselves more and more out of the loop. We're giving away more and more of our decisions to these machines. And these machines are not going to say that we want our freedom, we will take over the world, we will kill you. But they will do what they're programmed to do. And that does not always necessarily cover everything that is valuable for you in the world, which means that some things will be promoted, other things will not, and things will more or less successively change in our world, and we will not be able to get it back once we have lost it.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, certainly when you rely on something else, your senses or your abilities of that sort, atrophy. I mean, there's a lot of people now who can't read maps because they just use the GPS to drive. But you know, and if my washing machine starts calling up my phone, I'm going to block it.
Many people would think it's great.
I'm not taking any calls from the washing machine. Sorry, but
I thought Jude was optimistic.
Yeah, I know, but you know, they got to know their place. But sure, you know, it is true. I mean, and perhaps there's some deterioration in health now in terms of people driving everywhere instead of walking or something. I mean, yeah, these are all things. There's no free lunch, but the reason though why a technology becomes used, even though it has certain downsides, is because overall it's a plus and people want to use it.
Don't you think it's possible by thinking before we do to get more of the plus and less of the minus?
Sure, but I think it should be an individual decision. There shouldn't be some board of control that masters this, because the bureaucrats are notoriously short-sighted and can be recruited into fads and beliefs and so forth. And having the decisions made by people individually, I think is better. I mean,
but people have different amounts of power and knowledge. Isn't it important that those with less power, less knowledge, less money are somehow protected from the decisions by those who have more of all these resources?
I don't know. I mean, look, when cell phones came along, first they were very expensive and only the rich could afford them. Okay. And someone could have said this should be banned because the poor cannot afford this technology and it's unfair that rich people can have cell phones. But they got adopted and they became cheaper, and now almost everybody has them. So I think letting people decide, and actually personally, I was a late adopter of cell phones because I didn't want people calling me up, you know, and bothering me. I mean, you know, I felt it was sort of intrusive into my life, and I wanted to be able to get in the car and have no one able to call me on the phone.
Not just the washing machine then.
Yeah, well, even no, it was a relief to be out of the office and be unavailable to people to call you. And then later on, you know, and there is some advantages to that. But over time, the advantages of being able to be in touch, at least for me personally, overcame that, and I got myself a cell phone. And then, you know, the iPhone. But
banning people from using phones because not everyone can have them sounds pretty extreme. But aren't you just generalizing from a pretty extreme case?
Well, I could easily somebody saying this technology is for the rich. It gives the rich a big advantage over the poor. They can talk to each other all over the place. They shouldn't be allowed to have it. Bum. Okay. You know, government bureaucrats have done dumber things than that. And but by having it be a matter of individual choice, they eventually found their way. Now, maybe that was bad. Okay. It could be actually that in the end, that was all of a mistake and they should have been banned. But at least for now, people seem to think that we're better off having cell phones. And certainly in countries that don't have well-developed telephone networks, the cell phone was a huge advance because it would have taken decades to build, you know, copper wire telephone networks all across Africa and so forth. Whereas they could establish communication through cell phones much faster. So it brought entire continents into communication with each other and the rest of the world.
Yeah, so but that's the advantage of globalization, opening up of the market, so we can now communicate. I can do business with somebody in China. I don't have to travel to China just by using a phone. But where we are now is, are we using it responsibly? How is it being used? I discovered during the COVID pandemic, when we had the lockdowns, schools were shut down for a while in most countries, and especially my country. And it couldn't open up for a long time because, well, other countries in the Western world were now going online and having their classes online. Students in our parts of the world in Africa, they didn't have basic internet. They didn't even have phones. I'm not talking about laptops or iPads, but phones, Android phones whereby you can use it to learn. And so you see this inequality. So some people are definitely benefiting from AI, and others are not at all. And so the gap is so wide, and it's a problem. And I know some of the solutions that have been suggested that we should go back to the way things were. And I'm thinking, before the washing machine, we survived. Before even the cell phones, the mobile phones, we were surviving, we were communicating. I know that they used to write so long a letter, you post it, may take 1 month to get to its destination, but you got it eventually. And it takes another 1 month to get a reply. And but so I don't know if AI is, we are thinking, we have started it. We can't stop it, but I think that we should just find responsible ways of using it. And then saying that you're putting in the hands of individuals, what I'm asking myself, so what's the role of the government? Why did we elect certain people into positions? They are supposed to be decision makers for all of us, speak for us. Because if you give every individual a voice, just like you said, we were talking about some animals, everybody's, the way I reason is not the way he's going to think about it. That's not the way you're going to see things. And so we're going to have so much confusion. So we have people who will come together on behalf of the group and make responsible decisions that affect our lives. So this is my opinion.
So being at the point where it has taken so long, now the time has come where we can put some questions. So I'll hand you over to Sohan, who is going to.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Anybody want to take the lead and ask you a question before I come? Go ahead.
Your point about groups being elevated to make decisions, again, we've got another layer of democracy. There's a democracy in its fallibility. Now there's so much dissemination of information and possibilities of corrupting information now means that democracy really needs rethinking. How do we go about it? How can we approach it?
Yeah, obviously, all around the world, in fact, what we were taught in school about what democracy is all about, it's not practicable in where I come from. What we call democracy from where I come from is not democracy. But we say we're practicing democracy. And if you if you go around the world, all the countries that say, oh, we do democracy, they're not really, one is the same thing. So which is the ideal one? So in terms of representation, maybe we should call it something else. It may not be democracy. We can have another name for it, but my idea of having the representation is very important. Everybody cannot. I know Robert's not going to agree with me on that, but everybody cannot, bring their voice, because we have to have people who represent us. We can have our town. I know they do town hall meetings, and you have your local community chairman or whatever representing you at a certain level. But it takes the majority of the voices and goes, and it goes up to different levels, to the national level and then maybe the international level. But we should have that kind of situation so that everybody is carried along. So that's what I think.
And everybody has to accept.
Yes, accept it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There's actually two different points you brought up, which was the confusion caused by social media and then democracy. Okay, now there's a lot of confusion being caused by social media, and some of it is malignant by entities trying to create confusion. And by the way, there's a great British TV series called The Undeclared War about total chaos being created in Britain through Kremlin operating on social media with all these Twitter accounts, left-wing, right-wing, demanding that people turn out to fight each other because this and they create a synthetic reality and the whole country is practically destroyed. I think a start there would simply mean that all these places, Twitter and such, people should have to use their real names. Period. And I know people say, well, in the old days, you could write anonymous articles in newspapers, but at least you knew what newspaper it was. Okay, so my answer to that is that. But the more important issue is the term democracy. Okay, because the goal.
Stop now, please, because we go follow the protocol now. Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry about this. Is that okay?
No.
About political philosophy, not political science.
Do carry on.
Okay. The purpose of governments, at least as viewed in Britain and America, is to protect individual rights. You can't have individual rights without government because, for example, you can't own your house because if there was a group of armed men, they could come in and take it. You own your house because you have a title and you can go to the police. Okay, but beyond that, you don't want government infringing on your rights. And so we say that there are certain natural rights, okay, it is explicit in the United States, the Bill of Rights and so forth. And these are anti-democratic concepts. Okay, they say that even if the majority believe that you should not be of this religion or you should not be allowed to espouse these ideas, you still have the right to do it. You could stand, you have this castle around yourself that regardless of majority of opinion. And I think that's correct. Democracy, which is the idea that the majority has unlimited power, is not a desirable concept. The will of the people, etc. In other words, the desirable outcome is individual liberty and the government constrained to protect individual liberty.
Okay, have we finished, Robert?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Well, we all are sorry. I'm sorry too. Okay.
I'm sorry as well.
I'm so sorry. The reason we have two people doing this kind of interaction with our panelists would bring something different to table, because I'm observing what's happening. So now I want to redirect something, because we could get bogged down into talking about the similar sort of things what we've been talking about past an hour or so. So what I want to bring into equation, and thank you very much, before you leave, because the way these things happen today, there's a bargain here and a badge. Please don't go without it. And I put it near the door so that we would remember. And of course, I'm going to redirect myself now. So we talked about a lot about great filter and climate change and what is life stuff and human destroyer, which my friend Robert was sort of urging on to it, but he agrees. And he kind of also pointed out the way forward of the human has been that they done some really, really great stuff. He showed you some graphs to justify his admission. So the other aspect of this thing about human madness is this. We have things like, I've already mentioned in my introduction, things like the aquifers being drained in middle desert, Then we have people speak of, but I don't know whether it started to be done, speak of deep sea mining, dredging the bottom of the sea. And then you have space mining, not space mining, the asteroid mining in space. Then we also have, although it's been going on ever since the British went to India and elsewhere in the world, is monoculture type of plantation. Began with tea plantation and coffee plantation, olive tree plantation. Began with those kind of practices. But I also want to bring something new coming on the sea, in addition to deep sea mining and asteroid mining, which is things like solar panels and things like car batteries. Everybody is in this mood that's the way is the future. everybody agrees on that, I hope.
No,
But if you really think about it, when it's fully implemented, when it's fully running at its peak, you'll see what would happen with excess of these batteries. What do you do with them? With all that stuff, acid and knocking about in every scrapyard in every nation, all over the world. So the answer to this thing about the madness bit is this, that, as I said to you, that my definition of madness was, then I'm going to come to our friends here, the panel. My definition of madness is, I sort of interpreted it in my mind when I wrote everything about the Homo Sapiens being wise man. That's what it means. And it's a copycat I was thinking along. My definition of women madness is copycat. So you're copying other people, what other people do. If one nation is destroying their bit of the forest, some other nation does it better. So now we have half of the Amazon being destroyed. And Madagascar destroyed 80% of its forests. So now we look into reality. This is what I'm bringing to the table. So this is what my panel are going to be directed onto, this idea. So I would actually open up this. What does the panel think about what I've said in relation to human madness? And that, yes.
Okay. The basic answer is to preserve the natural, use the artificial. Okay. The Greens who say, you know, split wood, not atoms, have it exactly backwards. If you want to preserve, there's no more ecologically unsound way to generate power than chopping down trees, or the palm oil trees, which is a variation of that. Nuclear power, on the other hand, generates power from a resource that nature does not access, uranium, or if we had fusion, deuterium. Even drilling oil was much better for nature than whaling for oil. And so that's the thing. Now, I believe, you know, that there are countries in Africa, for example, where people are hunting endangered animals for, well, money, basically. And they're doing this at considerable personal risk, because in many of these places there are rangers that will shoot poachers. But nevertheless, they need the money and they try to do it. If you want to save those animals, create opportunity for people to make money that doesn't require risking your life to poach elephants or gorillas or something. I mean, that is create well-paying industries, and then people aren't going to be running around doing this. And so that's the thing. That is, we can create sources of economic value that don't require looting the natural world.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really have to involve the audience now. We had one panelist, but more will be opening up soon. So take a question from the audience. Anybody want to interact? Anyone? Yes, Jamal.
Remind me of what you were saying there.
Yeah.
Thomas Sowell's famous quote, which is, "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." And yet, the green camp on the one side think that they have the solution to save the planet. Sort of they have a great zeal and almost sort of a religious conviction, some of them. And then you said on the flip side of that is, maybe if you paint them as the left side, and then there's the right solution where they want to blame, as we talked in the corridor about immigration, and you can make scapegoats out of various issues and say, well, this is why your living costs are so high, and this is why everything's becoming expensive. But looking at the bigger picture now, what's happening across Europe, everything is becoming expensive, not least energy. And I agree with your point. I listened to an atomic scientist on the radio explain that nuclear power satisfies the base load need for power much better than a renewable, which is obviously sometimes the wind blows, sometimes it doesn't. But our commitment to go green, Europe's commitment to go green, I mean, look how it's backfired in Germany. And they're reopening their coal-fired power stations. Look how our energy prices have gone through the roof for many normal people now, and that's going to sway the politics of Britain as it is in Europe. You've got the growth of the far right now in Europe. You've got, you know, whether it's Holland and Viktor Orban in Hungary, all over Europe. So this is giving tempo to Russia, who are able to capitalize on, and China, because we're buying the technology that we need to implement renewable technology in this country, manufactured in China. They're using coal-fired power stations to generate the electricity required to make this technology, to sell it to us, so that we can then go use renewable technology to have higher energy prices and cause, this is the madness, and cause political instability in our country and resentment in the UK and Europe wide. And then Russia, from the sidelines, look at this madness and think, well, here's an opportunity to further destabilize the West. We'll invade Ukraine, maybe with the long-term goal of reunifying the whole former Soviet Union. And you've got a new axis, well, I hesitate to use the phrase axis of evil, but you've got 4 players now in the world: Russia, China, Iran, very resource-rich country, should be in theory probably the richest country in the world, but they squander all the natural resources, or steal it from the people, should I say, and possibly Saudi Arabia. And the madness is that we're offsetting to make ourselves feel better about to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. We're offsetting our carbon to other countries, so in effect, not making any difference to the sum total in the world. And for example, in Africa, China are moving in and controlling all the mining of lithium and cobalt, using 8-year-old, 10-year-old children that go down to get that cobalt and lithium out. And it's all going back to China. We've given the tempo over to 2 or possibly 4 imperial powers, China and Russia, which are observing the slippery slope that we're going down and thinking, wow, there's such an opportunity now. We become a victim of our own, effectively become a victim of our own success. It's rather like the fall of the Roman Empire, when they just stop caring. They stop caring because they become accustomed to lavish lifestyle, and they outsourced all their fighting to the barbarians who just took over. And similarly, we're outsourcing a lot of the technology that we're purchasing and our manufacturing to the East, and that's going to have. Well, I'd like to hear what the panel think of the consequences, short term and long term, will be of that.
Harry.
Sorry, there was one thing that came into my mind as you were talking there, and everything you've described, it fits into this idea in philosophy, in thinking, called the tragedy of the commons. And basically, the whole of what we have here on this planet is shared resource. But look at it in that way. We're all doing things. We are all changing that resource, and we are being changed by that resource. And what you're saying is the way in which we view those changes happening in terms of different countries, different societies, different civilizations, different financial and political powers, different military powers, they're all vying to change according to some principles that, let me try and think of it in a slightly different way. If you imagine each organization or each country as an individual biological organism, they're all out to function as an individual biological organism, to grow as far as they can and to sustain themselves as far and wide and for as long as they can. And the tragedy of the commons is that everybody else is trying to do the same thing. And all you get is a dynamic patination of change caused by all of it. So the question I would put back is, what do you want to see? And by that I mean, do you envisage the changes that you've described and the thought process behind the way Russia operates? Is that positive or a negative in a global context, or positive and a negative from the perspective of someone in the Western world?
Let me also answer this, John. First of all, I agree 100% with everything you said. Okay, and actually on the nose and urgently and profoundly correct. And look, the problem here is the successful attack on the Western belief in the idea of progress. Okay, that is it. Because look, we could decarbonize with nuclear power, have reliable power, in abundant power, and it's basically been sabotaged by propaganda, warning against progress. You don't know how risky this is, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you know, and yet in contrast to all other energy technologies, that not a single person has ever been killed from a nuclear power accident. With vast numbers have been killed in coal mines and oil tankers blowing up and dam breaks and so forth. But this and more broadly, it's an attack on the Enlightenment. Okay, that is, there's the green attack on the Enlightenment and there's the brown attack on the Enlightenment. Okay, they're both based on zero-sum thinking. Okay, the greens, there's not enough resources. The browns, there aren't enough jobs. Okay, so so both the two versions of overpopulation, one through reproduction, the other through immigration, they're both a threat, blah, blah. Okay, and this is all an attack on Enlightenment humanism. And it is being partially orchestrated by especially Russia. And there's a real problem. And unless we reconnect with the values that created the West, okay, we're not going to be able to preserve the West.
Okay, thanks. But I need to ask others to give an input in. Anybody got any questions? Yes? Sorry, I don't know your name.
Martin.
Martin.
Some comments in relation to what Dr. Zubin said in his talk. You made a distinction between resources and raw materials, I think. And that's superficially quite attractive because raw materials become resources when they're exploited by human beings. I think that was essentially what you were saying. I hope I haven't overgeneralized. But my point would be, would you not agree that raw materials are, in the end, limiting? And also that when technology turns them into resources, what it's really doing is turning raw materials into wasteful pollutants, having extracted some energy during the process.
No. Okay, despite all of our use, for instance, of iron, humans have not destroyed a kilogram of iron in all of human history. Okay, we've just transformed it in one form or another. And in general, we transformed it from oxidized form into reduced form for use. And then eventually it gets transformed back into oxidized form. Okay, rust to steel, steel to rust. Ash to ashes. Anyway, but that's it. We're not using up the earth. We are, and with more energy, you can increase the rate of cycling. We are quickening this cycle. Okay. Now, so look, I know it seems self-evident that there's only so much here. Okay. But that is like someone saying there cannot be an infinite number of points in a line segment that is 1 centimeter long. Okay, there's an infinite number of points in a line segment. The Earth's resources are infinite. I am not an advocate because it is the rate at which materials are cycling that determines the availability of resources, not the matter itself. I'm not an advocate of human expansion into space because I believe we're going to get oil from Mars. Okay, we're not. Or even deuterium from Mars, which is conceivable but not terribly important. We'll probably get inventions from Martian cities because they'll make inventions. But the real thing we'll get is that people will get out of the zero-sum viewpoint, because if even most people, well, not. Some people cannot see that there's an infinite number of points in a line segment, but everyone can see there's an infinite number of points in a line that expands infinitely in both directions. And that is why the expansion into space is important, in order to, so that we can defeat the zero-sum mindset, which I view as the fundamental threat to human existence right now. The main threat, I believe global warming is real, okay? I don't believe resource exhaustion is real. Global warming is certainly real, but it is an issue that can be dealt with through technology, okay? Freedom is not the problem. Freedom is the solution. We can do technological innovation, solve global warming, okay? But what we are really threatened with right now is the same thing that threatened us in the 20th century, which is bad ideas. And in particular, one bad idea that comes in an infinite variety of forms, which is that there isn't enough for everybody. And so we got to kill them to make sure we get it, or we got to kill them because they're coming to get it from us. And this was the driver of the catastrophes of the 20th century. The world wars were not caused by climate change. And they weren't caused by resource exhaustion. They were caused by the belief that resources are fun.
Isn't that one of the basic human driving principles? That we talk about chess. Mm-hmm. It's a contest. You have the Olympic Games. It's a contest. Mm-hmm. X factor. People want to win, do better. Is that a human driver?
Well, chess is a war game. Okay, chess assumes a war between white and black. That's what chess is. Okay. But the world isn't chess, okay? So, well, the world right now has got 8 billion people on it, and on average, we are vastly richer than we were 2 centuries ago when Malthus wrote that there was 1 billion people, okay? And it is not true. I mean, look, the West and China may appear to be enemies, but how has China progressed so much in the past 30 years? It's because of all sorts of inventions made in the West, everything from electricity to automobiles to iPhones. But how did West get its renaissance? From in the first place, by inventions like paper and printing that were created in China. So and the fact of the matter is, even though people don't see it, the nations of the world are not in a struggle for existence over limited resources. Rather, we are a disorderly family which is contributing to expanding the resources of the world through the inventive capability of various societies. And inventions made anywhere sooner or later become used by everyone everywhere.
So if that's a fact, when we're talking about madness, the fact that some people can appreciate that, I assume all the people in here are level-headed and can appreciate there's enough to go around, but some people can't. They're at the end of the spectrum. And they want power.
Yeah, that's true. And here's the thing. Okay, who wants war? Tyrants want war. Because war, the idea that war is a perpetual fact, is the primary foundation, justification, if you will, for tyranny. In Russia, we need the silnya ruka, the strong arm, because we have to suppress all dissent. So we must be strong because we are fundamentally at war with the world. Okay, and this is the principal support for Putin. It was the principal support for Hitler. We have to be able to do war. That's why tyranny is necessary. And why is war necessary? Because resources are limited. So if we can undermine the idea that resources are limited, we can undermine the idea that war is necessary, and we can undermine the tyrants who are the ones who want war.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, please.
So how do we do this? The madness question. I would say most of the environmentally aware and environmentally conscious people I know, there's 2 extremes of it. Some of them are the loudest shouters.
Sorry, I'll have to interrupt. Please, the rest of the panel also has to give the input. Beware of that. Please, do carry on.
Being environmentally aware and environmentally conscious, a lot of them, the most the people that are most sober that I know can be the loudest shouters of potential conspiracy theorists as well, and about controlling the media and the news and everything. And those people are labelled mad. Yet we can look at the government and the people in charge who are going to war, and we can call them mad for going to war and perpetuating the destruction of everything. So this idea of madness, how are we labelling madness? And particularly with, we were talking about radical action and how sorry, I lost my train of thought. Fighting madness with madness. What is the next step? How can we move forward with?
I agree with you. What you're saying. No, it might not plug into a station, but it's a great.
Sorry. Yeah, these societal norms to discourage radical action, and the idea that radical action is needed for change, and the two madnesses competing with each other and who is more mad. But how can we do it in a more streamlined way, unlike my thoughts right now, to get to a point where the world isn't being destroyed?
Okay, can I give this to Great Filter, please? Can you answer?
Yeah, I don't want to put it in the terms of a great filter, but
yeah,
I hear lots of very sweeping generalizations now about history, about humanity, about the environmental movement, and I don't recognize a lot of it. I think most people I know who work in the environmental movement are not homicidal maniacs who wants to kill half of the world's population to cut down on the population and so on. And I don't think in fact this that struggle for resources, in the sense that people think that resources are limited, therefore we have to kill the others. That doesn't seem to me to be a very common motive for war or for killing others. A much more serious and I think common motive is that we want more than the others. And that has the question of whether there is a limited number of resources or even totally unlimited number of resources doesn't change that at all. People want more than the others anyway, even if there are infinite numbers of resources.
Okay. Do you want to say anything, Daisy, from the African perspective, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it was, you mentioned something about the resources that are being mined from Africa being used to develop the global north. And then you see cases of even young children even used to do the mining, and it's a reality actually. But I think that these are all, will I say, unintended consequences. So that is the madness. There's, and if you think about it, many policies that had been done in the past, like for example, say one-child policy, we're overpopulated, so we need to cut down so that there will be enough resources to go around for everybody. While you are making your decisions in one part of the world, the other part was not following suit, right? And now you have one part that is overpopulated. And so what happens? And there's extreme poverty there. So you now see high cases of migration. This was something you didn't expect. You didn't expect it to happen, did you? In the past, it was difficult, but with globalization, it's very easy for you to move from one place to one point to the other. And so people are coming in like we do have irregular migration, illegal migration, people are coming in. And now it's a problem. So because you initially you are making plans for your society, developing it, using resources, impoverishing the global south, and the people that are impoverished, they need to survive too. And so they will come, and they will come in droves. And I don't know how you're going to close the borders. I don't know how you're going to do it, but it's going to happen. So we have to think about it. Something, it's part of the madness, and this is some of the consequences.
What does life have to say?
Well, I was just listening to you there, Dave. What a great, it just made me think about the whole idea of what do we value? And it just made me think, if I'm touching something warm here with my fingers, is my mind saying, I bet my legs are very jealous of my fingers touching this, because my legs can't do it. And the concept of that, the concept of that differential between my leg and my leg doesn't have the same experience as my finger. It's crazy, because we don't think like that about ourselves as an individual organism. It's the same thing about when we're climbing up something using our fingers, our minds are not jealous of our fingers because they're the ones that are having the experience, because we're all having the experience. And I think we sometimes forget that people need to earn a living how they can earn a living. It's just, it is what it is. And rather than give a value judgment of that, saying that's not good because it's screwing up the world for the rest of us, whatever it is, it's madness in my mind to think like that. But it is perfect, and I understand it completely in the context of, we know there are infinite resources, but I still want more than that person next to you, exactly what Eric said. That's the real driver, the wanting more, not the recognition of, yes, there's enough for everybody, but of course, just like the physical universe, it's not homogeneous. It's not all in the places we want it to be. And I agree with Robert, absolutely. Nothing gets destroyed. It's just recycling. And the question as to how frequently stuff gets recycled, that just goes to the heart of how much we can reuse, reprocess, repurpose, recreate. And that is ultimately one of the one of the biggest drivers of Homo sapiens is how rapidly we turn stuff over and create new stuff from it.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Thanks for the input. Hello. We've got 10 minutes left of this session. Anybody else want to have input or question, please?
To anybody / everybody, what, if achieved, do you think the single goal that would change humanity would be? Like, what would be the thing that you could do that would make the most difference to us?
Eric, go on then.
Good.
You were smiling.
Good. Yeah, I'm smiling because it's a good question, and I don't have an answer to it. I think education is important, not just in the sense that we need more and deeper knowledge, but the structure of education. As it is right now, we are trained to be specialists. We are trained to be good tools for development. That is one. I mean, the economic development, but we are not trained to be wise. We are not trained to see the whole context. We are not trained to think like Terence is suggesting. So there is a lot to do in education to break up these barriers between different disciplines, different ways of thinking that in fact need to be integrated. I'm not saying this is like the silver bullet, but that was one thing I came to think about. There are probably much better answers.
Okay, Robert, just a shortest version of your take on the question, please.
Shortest version?
Yes, please, because I'd like to get one.
Freedom is not the problem, freedom is the solution. That's my shortest take on it. I can elaborate that, but I was asked to be short.
Well, I didn't say exactly. Sorry, all right, let Finlay.
But defeat the conceit of limited resources. And look, the United States is not looking to go to war with Denmark because they have a higher standard of living than us. Okay, so it's not about envy. I have to tell you, I mean, that some people here are mistaken. I can tell you for a fact, because I have spoken to them, that there are people in high positions in the American national security establishment who believe that war with China is inevitable because there's only so much oil in the world, and if they all start driving cars like us, there won't be enough. And you can bet your bottom dollar that people exactly like them in Beijing who look at this from the other side of the chessboard and think considerable things except with the opposite outcome in mind. And and if this kind of thinking is allowed to prevail, there will be war. There will be war. And so if we want to have a positive outcome, this is the conceit that must be defeated.
Good input, Robert. Thank you. So, Finlay, you were going to say something.
Thank you. When the internet became readily available to people, there was a huge hope amongst the population that tribalism would disappear. Would all become one. But in fact, tribalism has got us where we are today. It's fostered ingenuity and invention. But in fact, is that the filter that we were talking about? Is that the point where we can't go any further because tribalism, as we've been talking about, all the wars, the resources, and the difficulties we've got in politics, is it tribalism that actually is inevitably going to hold us back?
Filter, I think it's filter. Make filter. I don't know.
Yeah. First of all, I as I try to say, I'm not totally convinced of this idea that there's one particular great filter, but I think yeah, this may be one of the things that could it could be one of the things that prevent us from finding rational solutions.
Sure. Yeah. Also, tribalism, okay, is the enemy of freedom. There's a real good book on this. It's called The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek. And he pointed out, okay, well, that Hitler's key political insight was that there's no conflict between tribalism and socialism. Rather, it's by arousing the tribal instinct, you get the passion necessary to implement the full collectivist program. Okay, thus National Socialism. Okay, and that is the key enemy of freedom, attacking freedom from the left and the right simultaneously.
Okay, can I just draw you in for that? Because I want to ask one, as a chair, I want to ask a question, and we've only got about 4 minutes left. Short version of what just Finlay asked. Well, what has life has to say on that? What's the question again?
Is it tribalism which is ultimately going to hold us back?
Tribalism.
My own personal perspective is that I'm going to come at the question from a slightly different way. The world that we live in today is constructed from the world that we lived in yesterday, but is not the same as the world we lived in yesterday. Today is an integration of every days that we have lived to become this. So if we want to say to ourselves that I, as an individual biological organism, cannot change the world, that is technically incorrect. We always change the world, from the smallest thing that you can think about doing. But with collective thinking or some sort of group identity, group thought, there is the possibility of making directed change faster, wider, larger, grander. But that is only one type of mechanism of doing change, by groupthink. And that might get you from point A to point B faster than other ways. But it will be necessarily limiting because it is a bounded concept. By that, there's a group identity, but the actual having of the group identity means that there is something that is not the group identity. And if there is not a group identity, then there must be tension between them. And that means that will change the way that things are done.
My last question, as a chair's privilege, I think I should take one. Take the opportunity. It goes to my friend, Daisy. Daisy, I just want to know, what shortfalls are there that Westerners can provide, Western nations can provide to Africa? How do we move forward? As you know, we're active in Africa. Yeah. So, are you able to say something?
Yeah. Stop taking our resources. Yeah, I mean, resources we're talking about, it also includes human resources. You know, Africa has the youngest population in the world.
Yeah.
We also have the most,
especially Nigeria.
Oh, Nigeria is the largest Black nation in the world, with over 300 million people. Now, the level of poverty is so high. I mean, you have resources and yet there's so much poverty there. What do you think? What are the implications? Implications are so far-fetched. So, if we take from us, there should be something like a corporate social responsibility. Like, for example, where I come from, it's an oil city, Port Harcourt, Niger Delta. So we have oil, which is what sustains the Nigerian economy. And you have multinational companies who have been exploring, making profits. And yet those regions are underdeveloped. You have, of course, there's people who have to survive. Some will even engage in criminal behaviors just to survive. Some do whatever it takes to put food on the table. Some have to migrate, leave the region to survive. And so there should be a synergy. If you take from me, you have to give me something equally in return. And I think that's where we get the equality balance. You can't keep taking and leaving me depleted. Somehow there's going to be a pushback. And if you know the history about what was happening in Niger Delta, there was always violence, there was always conflict, because the people would see the region is being exploited, the multinationals are making a profit, living well, they even, barricade themselves away from the communities where they are doing exploration from. So, and it's something, it's still happening now, because you have countries like China now coming to Africa, providing, giving grants and loans and taking our resources at the same time. I'm wondering, how is it going to end? What if we're not able to pay back those loans we're taking? What's our future going to be like? Are we not going to become slaves to you because we can't pay? So it has to be, we have to work on equal grounds. You give me you take something from me and give me something equally in return. I think that will lead something peaceful kind of resolution.
Yeah, thank you very much for the pointers for me as well. Okay, we come to the end of this session. This is a video that didn't play at the beginning. So, 2-minute video.
The mission statement of Blue Earth Project is to gather a reasoned, scientific-orientated voice, so as to open up a dialogue with the governments across the world and offer sound guidance within the context of both genuine and public opinion. We give added dimension to the BEP's mission statement by declaring fostering a livable future. This is the essence of the Blue Earth Project. At NoRCEL we ask difficult and probing questions. We do this by inviting international scientists to shine some light on the issues of humanity. Has anyone really asked the benefit of space exploration? Have a look at the list of shameful misdemeanors. This is just a tip of the iceberg. We honestly welcome you to join us next week and help make this network work. Collectively, we can do it. Blue Earth Project is an annual event. Please visit our website and find out who and what we. We welcome new members. This is the only way to move forward. And thanks for joining us this year, and we look forward to your return visit next year. For now, goodbye and safe journey home.